The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
Obviously, we over budgeted last year. I hate to say that I was right, but I was right. So.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
I take our constitutional rights, the constitutional rights of my constituents, very seriously.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
Mr. Speaker, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you boil this down, there is never any time that a parent's right to govern what their children see and what they're exposed to should ever be bypassed.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Years. Those funds become available where they were originally intended to go. And so this bill has come about after a long effort by several individuals from all different aspects and facets to create an opportunity. One of the first things that this bill does is, in the case of the first legislation that was passed, you had to have had a bond fail to qualify, and then you had to have a plan that was approved by a panel. The panel was comprised of the executive director of the Department of Education at that time, and the administrator of Doppel, and then
all right, everybody, welcome. Idaho Signal is live on the air. It is 10:33 up north, 11:33 down there at the Statehouse. Both the House and the Senate are going through appropriation bills. This is where they spend our money. So we've already seen a few bills come through that have had objections from the more fiscally conservative folks out there in terms of how we're spending the money. So anywho, we will keep track of that. If there is something contentious, we'll go live there. But I do need to crow a little bit. We need to celebrate a little bit. Throw up that graphic. Look what got signed, folks. Yes, the mask mandate bill was finally signed by Governor Little yesterday morning, about 24 hours to go before it would have just became law anyway without his signature, but he did sign it. Folks, I'm telling you, this is pretty wild because I have the dynamics of this bill are more than just masks, okay? More than just masks. And you probably are getting sick and tired of me talking about masks. But the mask, even during COVID, even now, today, the mask is a symbol of something, right? It's a symbol of something. It is now a dividing line between two nations that live next to each other, two communities that live next to each other in your city, in your town, even in this state. Even in this state, we see people still hanging on to this false sense of security that a cloth mask gives you to fight off some sort of airborne viral infection. And so this isn't just a victory against mask mandates. It is a victory among many fronts, okay? Many fronts. And we're going to get into it today. We have gone back into the archives and followed this journey, which culminated with the signature yesterday from the governor. But really, it all started with this top-down enforcement, mask enforcement. Now you've heard the arguments, you've heard the debates if you've been following this. But for those who haven't, what happened from the top level, from the highest levels of our government, was a complete psychological operation to instill fear in the public in order for you to think that this mask somehow provides you protection. Okay? Especially in our children, which did 0 healthy children who contracted or tested positive for that virus died. 0 in this country. 0. If you were already sick, this exacerbated the problem. Okay? But if you were a normal, healthy child, you didn't get sick from this, and you didn't die from this. Okay? So we don't need to rehash. We don't need to rehash the entire thing here, because what we need to point out is that from the CDC level, the experts issuing their strongly worded recommendations and shaming people for not doing it, it just trickled down all the way to your school board, all the way to your courtrooms, all the way to your DMV offices, all the way. And they said, you cannot engage in society unless you wear a mask. Okay? They could have said that about anything. You cannot engage in society unless you do X. Right? And so this bill, getting this through, was a culmination of hard work and effort, and the ability to to finally say no, right? And it took so much. It took elections. It took fortitude from the folks in the Capitol, and it took a certain strategy that we're going to talk to some of these legislators later today. I have invited Senator Brian Lenny, Representative Rob Beiswinger, who were the two sponsors behind the bill that got signed this year, H32. And I've also invited former Representative Carrie Hanks, who championed this bill in 2021, in February of 2021, at the height of the masking madness, of all of the madness. February 21. Put your mind back there again. And she fought for 2 years in the session to get that through before she lost her primary. Bananas that she loses her primary for fighting for us. But Carrie Hanks will join us after the top of the hour as well, because this is a lot of her work. She laid a lot of the foundation and a lot of the groundwork for this fight. And then we'll get into the strategy behind it. Like how did we spend the last 4 years, right? From 21 to 25, it's actually almost 5 sessions, like 5 full sessions, getting these bills, having them stop in the Senate, and then holding elections and being like, well, we're going to change people. We're going to get people in there who can vote the way we need them to vote. And then it wasn't enough. So we doubled down in 24 and said, let's get more people in there. Let's get more conservatives in there. And then now you see what happens. And then people have different strategies, right? We'll talk with Brian Lenny, who came in 2023's session, a completely different person than he is right now, but his effectiveness is incredible, but he's still the same guy, right? So anyway, so we're going to get into that. We're going to get into all that. But let's do some context here first. Let's do some context. I want you to watch this. We went through, like I said, 5 years worth of footage from the archives of the state legislature. up late pulling video, pulling clips from committee hearings, from floor sessions, all throughout the House. And so rather than walk you through everything and just show you clip and then have my commentary, we just put together this montage here that is pretty powerful. And it's gonna show you the journey that a bill like this had, okay? Where we start out in February of 2021 and we take you all the way to today. So let's roll this. Go for it.
Okay, go, Mommy.
Put the mask on. No, you gotta wear it on, honey. No, you gotta keep it on.
Special place in hell for these people who have done this to this man's daughter.
The concerned parent says a teacher tied a mask around the face of his special needs daughter.
The mask was quite tight on her face, which was, of course, obstructing her ability to speak and her ability to breathe.
Well, that father is blaming the school mask mandates for his daughter Sophia's suffering.
Fox 35's Holly Bristows.
Chairman and committee, this RS is designed to eliminate future mask mandates. If people were dying in the streets, we would not need government mandates.
I'm a state employee of the Department of Agriculture. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. As I started last month, February 16th, I was put on medical leave the next day because a contractor questioned why I was wearing a face shield. I provided a copy of my doctor's note to the contractor and my boss, stating I could not wear a mask.
Nobody ever should require me or my children to put on a medical device just because they think that's what's best for my health, and then turn me away at hospitals. I've now been to the emergency room twice, and they've turned me. I sat for 3 hours in the emergency room 2 days ago.
I was awakened one night when I was 14 years old by a stranger laying on top of me. He put his hand over my face and I could not breathe. He was so close to my face that I could only see his eyes. And I saw those eyes day and night for months and months. I would just, a mere blinking would bring his eyes back to my mind. And through the years I've healed, but now with these masks, when I go to the grocery store, those eyes are on every aisle and around every corner. And I have avoided going to the store as much as possible. It creates enormous anxiety for me.
We had a doctor of psychology that came. And when she testified, she said, "Do you know how many children are raped every day?" And then, can you imagine those children having to put a mask on their face to go to school the next day? Those masks were to muffle their screams and their cries. And she said they are just unable to do that. Can you imagine the trauma of that?
As far as other issues, I have kids in Idaho City, little elementary kids who are still being masked again, despite the fact there are hardly any cases, because one person on the school board thinks it's in their best interest to keep a mask despite the pleas of the parents to take those masks off their face and let them get back to school without breathing whatever they breathe in that mask all day long.
Okay, let's set aside the wearing masks versus not wearing a mask controversy for a minute, and just consider that there is a time, any place, where a mask should be required.
This is a matter of personal freedom, that your health and safety is your responsibility primarily. It is not government's responsibility.
However, I would leave you with this final thought. If the government can today require us to wear a mask, tomorrow it could require us to all obtain a vaccine. What's it going to require next? It's my belief that we are starting down a very dangerous slope of taking away personal choices, individual liberties, and the government is doing that all in an attempt to provide safety and security. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I would err on the side of personal liberty and freedom, and I would allow individuals to make these choices, and I would ask for your green light. Thank you.
Does any member wish to change his vote?
I think we're mostly familiar with this bill. It's a bill to prohibit the state of Idaho, a political subdivision, or an officer of the state from mandating the usage of a face mask, face shield, or other face covering for the purpose of preventing or slowing the spread of a contagious or an infectious disease.
Acquisitions, whether there's masking, not masking, and so forth. And so with that, I just ask that you consider whether or not the mask and the protocols and the mandates actually accomplish what we think they're going to accomplish.
Someone listening to this debate could get the wrong information, and it's important to public health that people have accurate information right now. When it comes to how well masks work, it's well documented that the higher quality mask, the better protected you are. It doesn't matter the size of the virus, it matters how the virus floats around in the air. It gets attached to moisture droplets. And that's what the masks help protect against.
We are smart. We know what our health needs are. If our health needs require us to put on a mask, we can mask. But if they are not, a simple recommendation would do. We do not need to live with people making these decisions on our behalf any longer.
U.S. Constitution Amendment 9, I'll read. The enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. You don't need to list our rights in the Constitution, all of them. That's what that amendment means. It's my right to decide my health decisions, not yours. I support this bill.
And when you have had your own child in a hospital, lying on a bed, because they tried to slit their throat because of all that was happening in their lives at that time, you'll understand the issues and how severe this actually is. And we don't know the consequences, the full effects of these consequences until many years down the road, but we're seeing it happen now, and it's happening with our youngest children with their development, and it's happening with our older children with their mental health. And so it is up to the parents. They get to decide on what's transpiring with their kids and what's best for their kids. It is not up to us to mandate this, and so I'll be supporting this bill.
Does any member wish to change the vote? We'll lock this.
But as we sit here today in 2024, it's crystal clear to me, and I think to probably most of us in this room, if we admit it, that much of our COVID response was unscientific, unjustified, and frankly absurd. So today I stand firm in the conviction that no government official, politician, or bureaucrat has the authority to strip us of our inalienable rights. This is not a path we can afford to tread again. Instead, we must ensure that our response to any health crisis respects the dignity, freedom, and well-being of all Idahoans, and it's grounded in genuine science and unwavering respect for individual rights. And I know everyone probably has an opinion on this, and there's other people who are signed up to testify, so I'll just leave it there and stand for questions.
IOSH rating of an N95 means that particulates, it screens out 95% of particulates, screens out almost no bacteria and absolutely no viruses. So the only effective measure that the government may have been able to take if they were going to mandate something that was effective and followed actual science, which was established 23 years before the pandemic and well beyond that, would have been to mandate and pass out NIOSH P100 masks, and instead we've got dual and triple masking of an N95 mask. N95 plus N95 plus N95 is not 270. It's still 95.
So this bill has gone through this body, passing several times. The concerns that have, I believe, that have brought it to end on the other side of the building, I think those concerns have been addressed. And what this bill does, it is preventing government entities, cities, counties, the governor, from mandating mask wearing.
So to say that the N95 is no more effective than the surgical mask means that it just covers the face and protects against spit. So it is not a negation of the effectiveness of the surgical mask. It basically saying that the N95 mask is ineffective. So for that purpose, I will be voting in favor of this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just going to say this is a personal freedom bill, and let's stand up for the people. It's a We the People bill, and let's do this for the people of Idaho.
Clerk will unlock the machine, and the members will cast their votes. Has every member voted? You can. Does any member wish to change their vote? Clerk will lock the machine and record the roll.
House Bill 32 is not the first time this House has dealt with it, which is the first time this year. I do hope this just simply prohibits government employees, government officials from imposing mask mandates for the purpose of virus and infectious disease transmission, from enforcing that on citizens. So we won't be able to throw anyone in jail or impose massive fines. And I want everyone to know that I truly hope this year will be the final year that we finally get this to the governor's office for his signature and put it behind us.
Clerk will unlock the machine. Members will cast their votes. Has every member voted? Can. Clow.
But as we sit here today in February 2025, it's crystal clear that I would say, much of our COVID response was unscientific, unjustified, and frankly absurd. As was just briefly discussed, under the heavy hand of the CDC and Anthony Fauci, we became fixated on mandating that not only free-thinking adults, but toddlers and babies were also forced to wear masks.
The saddest thing I saw was children being masked up, from my perspective, for no reason at all. And I do think it had a really major negative impact on the young people in our schools. And it was heartbreaking to me to see, and I'd love to never revisit that.
And also, simply this is usurping local control. I'm going to be voting no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President, to debate in favor of the bill. This was not about local control. This was a federal government that pushed this down through reimbursement to hospitals. This wasn't local people making decisions. This was them following in line by what they were told to do by CMS, CDC. That was the issue here. What bothers me the most was it was the biggest head fake, psyop, that I've ever experienced in my life.
And ensuring that never again will Idahoans be subjected to government-imposed mask mandates. Because in this state, we trust the people, not the bureaucrats, to make their own health decisions. And so I proudly support this bill and will be voting for it, not only on my behalf, but on my family's, on my constituents, and on many, many Idahoans. Thank you, Mr. President.
I think Idaho deserves much better. We keep hearing in the news about what the next pandemic's going to be. I've heard bird flu, swine flu, whatever China invents next. So by moving this legislation forward, we're taking essential steps toward restoring public confidence and showing Idaho that the mistakes of the past will not be repeated in the future. And I think something that gets lost in this debate, or soon to be had debate, with this bill specifically, is that this bill does not prevent anyone who wants to wear a mask from doing so. If you want to wear a mask, if you want your kids to wear masks, you can do that. This bill says if you like your mask, you can keep your mask, but the state of Idaho can't force us to do that ever again.
The vote count shows 27 in favor with 6 against and 2 absent. The majority having voted in the affirmative. House Bill 32 has passed the Senate.
Pretty good stuff there, folks. Pretty good stuff. What a journey. Look, I'm not gonna mince words here, because I think I think we need to take a look at what all of that meant, because like I said at the top of the show here, this isn't necessarily specifically about the mask. It's about this word, and you heard it there from Senator Guthrie, local control. That word, that term, local control, I don't think it sounds as good as what people are using it for, because the people who keep using that term, local control, always vote against your personal rights. And so when a bill like this comes along and you see a guy who has that mentality, that was him, Senator Guthrie, the chairman of the Senate State Affairs Committee, who for 3 years, or for many years, 3 bills in a row, didn't have a hearing because he disagreed with it, because he thinks it's all about local control, that as long as the tyranny is local, it's okay, right? As long as it's happening locally, then it's fine. Your rights can be stripped by a mayor or a school board trustee. That's fine. But we certainly at the state level are not going to tell local tyrants that they can't be local tyrants. And this goes for so many issues. Property rights, right? HOAs, right? There's a bill about property rights with short-term rentals that impose certain restrictions on those who have a short-term rental, like an Airbnb or vacation home, where they have to jump through a whole different set of hoops. They have to abide by a whole different set of rules than a normal property owner. But it's local control. Well, I'm sorry, folks, but we're awake, we're paying attention, and local tyrants will be dealt with one way or the other, at the voting booth or through statutory law that comes from up from the top. So a lot more on that to come this session. There's some bills that are flying through, and we'll keep tabs on them. Great victory. All right, the Senate and the House are still in session. Hopefully, if they adjourn before we go off the air, we'll have a bunch of great guests coming on to talk through this. We'll be right back.
We need to start making Idaho first, meeting the needs of Idaho families.
The dictionary defines a pledge as something that you give as a sign that you'll keep a promise. As Idahoans, that's what we're looking for in our elected leaders, a sign that they'll keep their word. Talk is cheap, and so are political promises, hidden agendas, and special interests. This is why we created the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge, affirming the values Idahoans have been living by for over 100 years. inspired by the only two documents everyone has agreed to live by. So when an Idaho legislator signs our pledge, inviting voters to publicly hold them accountable, that's what we call political integrity. The pledge restores trust and honesty between voters and their legislators. It means protecting our shared values and ensuring your voice is heard in Boise. And that is priceless. Thank your legislator for having the political courage to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge. And if they haven't, it's time to ask why.
Yeah, that's right, folks. It's time to sign. It's time to sign the pledge. Did you know that 41 legislators have signed the pledge right now? 41. There's 105 in the entire legislature, and 41 of them have signed. It is fantastic. Who will be 42? Head over to timetosign.idahopledge.com and you will you can throw in your address there and it'll tell you who your legislators are, and then you ask them to sign the pledge. And they'll come over and they'll sign it. All right, very good. Well, that was abrupt ending of the music there. That's okay though. All right, folks, we have spent the first top of the hour just kind of going through the history of the mask mandate bill and how it started. I hope you appreciated that montage. Can a montage be 15 minutes long? I don't know. There was a lot of powerful footage in there, folks. A lot of powerful footage. I mean, you saw Senator Tammy Nichols when she was a representative. You saw Representative Carrie Hanks when she was a representative before losing her primary. And then, of course, Senator Brian Lenny, 2 years in a row, running the bill or having it go through the House so that way when it gets to the Senate, he could run it through the Senate. And I believe Senator Brian Lenny is with us now. Is he there? Maybe? No, he's not. Oh, it's Brian Allman. All I got the cue was Brian is here. Let's bring Brian Allman in.
Unfortunately, I am not Senator Lenny.
You're not.
Maybe someday I'll be
hairstyle,
Senator Lenny. That's true.
Same hairstyle. Well, Brian, I don't know if you got a chance to see that montage in the history of the mask mandate. I mean, when you look at it all in its entirety, in its whole. Am I wrong to just say that this is more than just about masks?
No, of course not. It's about putting those restrictions on government to interfere in our private lives that I think we've taken for granted for most of American history. The idea that you can tell people that if they leave their homes, they have to wear a mask. If you go to school, if you're, whatever, it's you step back and it seems pretty absurd. If they can order you to do that, what else? What couldn't they tell you to do?
Yeah, and again we heard a few folks say that in that montage, and I'm curious, Brian, when you look at how, and this is one of the things I want to get into with Senator Brian Lenny, when you look at how a bill like this met so much opposition, even in from the Senate side, and yet these warriors, Carrie Hanks, and there were other bills too that dealt with like just getting rid of masks in schools. Like there were many different versions. It wasn't just 3 bills that didn't make it through. I believe Representative Guyan Desmordon and Representative Ron Nate at the time, they both teamed up on a bill that would stop it in schools. And again, it passed the House, but it met the same fate in the Senate. The strategies that people have to use to get these bills across the line, and when you keep meeting a wall, you kind of have to shift your attitude, shift your gear. You're not necessarily changing the bill entirely, but walk us through a little bit on what you've seen over the years of how people's strategies have shifted.
Well, getting bills through, it's like those games where you've got to put a block through the shape hole that babies can play, except you've got to get the same thing through one shape and then through another shape and through another, so you've got to figure it out so that it gets buy-in from the House and the Senate and the governor. Remember, this is the same governor that when Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeehan, used her powers as acting governor to tell schools they didn't have to mask up students, he called it just a political stunt. It's great to see him come around and sign the bill. He's always adept at seeing which way the political winds are blowing. But it does require a lot of persuasion, a lot of changes, and sometimes it just requires changing personnel. I don't know specifically if the former pro tem Chuck Winder was how involved he was in blocking this bill, but 3 times it came to the Senate and did not advance, did not get a committee hearing, and finally we have a new pro tem, and finally he agrees to let it be heard. So take that for what you will. It's also striking to me watching that montage, that video of how many people were involved in this who aren't even there anymore. You saw Ron Nate and Carrie Hanks and Dorothy Moon, Gayan DeMordaunt. They were all there pushing this and working on it, and they weren't there to see the end result. I mean, they're still here. They're just not in the legislature anymore. So that's also a reminder that sometimes things take a while, and sometimes if you're trying to get something done, maybe your part in it is just to get the ball rolling, and then someone else later on will pick it up and take it across the finish line, to mix some metaphors there.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. So then let's talk a little bit again about the term local control, because we've seen a few bills this year deal with telling local, political subdivisions that, hey, you can't do that. You can't do that to your citizens that are under your jurisdiction. You can't do that. And it doesn't really come with a slap on the wrist or a fine or anything, but it's these things that like we continuously have to push back on. I mean, folks will find any reason they can to just impose their will when they're not acting in the best interest of individual rights. And so, I mean, there was a bill that went through the other day that even dealt with city councils, where a city council person said, hey, I have an issue with something on the consent agenda, and I'd like to take it off so we can discuss it. And then even within that group, they're like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. And now they had to run a bill that says you can't stifle a representative, somebody elected that person to do a job, and you are stopping them from doing it. What is up with the local control tyrants?
Well, my sense is that the local control argument, it's, Idaho's a conservative state mostly. And as conservatives, we believe that the best government possible is the smallest and lowest government. You want the most accountable government to be your local government, your mayors, councils, county commissioners, and then the state is above that, and then the federal government, more or less. And the federal government's supposed to deal with big things: international diplomacy, military action. State government deals with slightly smaller things, but it's really the one connected to you the most is your local government, and it's become just an article of faith, a part of the catechism of the conservative movement that local control is best. But I think sometimes people take that slogan and forget what it actually means, because what's the purpose of government at its base? It's to protect our natural rights. And if there's a local government that's infringing on those rights, then it's the responsibility of the state government to step in and say, no, we're going to protect the people. Because ultimately, what's the smallest unit in our country? It's the individual. And then after that, the family. And so if there's a local government that's infringing on the natural God-given rights of individuals and families, then yeah, the next level government should come in and put a stop to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a story even when it comes to the story that broke last weekend or whenever it was, 2 weekends ago, and I guess now, with that town hall disruption up here in Kootenai County. And allegedly there was a conversation between the head of the Central Committee, Brent Reagan, and a lieutenant from the CDA police, where he was asking the lieutenant, what should we do when someone starts to disrupt our meeting? And there was a little bit of back and forth. Well, try this, try that. And then, but the lieutenant's ultimate solution was just cancel your meeting and reschedule it. Brian, I mean, these guys swear an oath to uphold the Constitution and protect the people. And so when you have a peaceful assembly happening and someone is disrupting it, the natural inclination of the person who's in charge of protecting our constitutional rights would say to the person disrupting, you are not allowed to disrupt this peaceful assembly. Please leave the premises. And yet he's here saying, just shut it down and find another way to do it. Apparently there's body cam footage out there. Hopefully we can get that conversation and confirm it. But let me just say, it doesn't surprise me that a police officer hired by the city would say something like that.
Well, that goes to all sorts of things. Equal protection of the law. Would the officer be saying the same thing if the situation were reversed? If it was a conservative activist going to a meeting of Democrats and just interrupting and yelling and screaming and trying to disrupt the proceedings? I don't know. I don't know. Even the specific person we're talking about, but that is a question that does come up. Is it do you apply this equally? I think it's been understood throughout American history that we don't allow the heckler's veto. We don't allow one person to go in and override everyone else who came there to see the meeting. And when we talk about personal rights, yeah, we have the right to freedom of speech, but you don't have the right to go shut down other people's speech. If you have hundreds of people who came to hear your legislators explain what they're doing at the Capitol, one person does not have the right to shut that entire meeting down. I mean, I'm sure everybody watched President Trump's speech last night where one single Democrat was refusing to sit down. He was yelling and screaming and trying to disrupt the president's speech. And the speaker, to his credit, had him removed, as he should have. Thankfully, there were no biting incidents this time.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Man, Brian, isn't it odd to jump on Idaho Signal and not talk about the biggest news in the world, which was that amazing speech last night? I mean, that was absolutely incredible. Imagine forcing, I don't know what 200 or so Democrats to sit through a Trump rally speech. I mean, that's pretty much what happened last night.
It's definitely a new era in America, a good one.
A good one. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Very good. All right. Well, we're going to try and keep that stuff rolling here too. All right, folks, both the House and the Senate are at ease for the moment. They're going to reconvene. So depending upon whether or not they had to go caucus or do any sort of meetings right away, we hopefully will be able to have Senator Lenny, Representative Beiswinger, and perhaps even former Representative Carrie Hanks, who is she's a school bus driver and a substitute teacher. I mean, so she knows a lot about kids and she's been around kids. She's got tons of grandkids. And so she really had a personal touch, a lot of great personal touches when it came to that mask bill. So hopefully we'll have those on in a moment. But in the meantime, folks, we still are looking at what happened this morning and following some bills that were in the committee. Representative Hawkins, Brian, was back today with a bill to protect kids and give parents some power. Let's watch this presentation. This is House Bill 352, and we'll let Hawkins introduce it here.
Before you this morning with House Bill 352, which in its original form, these two bills that we've heard this morning were together, and after lots of public comment, which I was a little surprised on this part in 352, that the largest complaint I got was that, why are we stopping at the third grade? I had several text messages and emails that asked me, so in grades 4 and on, this is okay. And just to point out, in light of our current president and his announcements last night, this issue of teaching sexual orientation and gender identity will now be listed at the federal level, that any school system teaching these subjects will be denied their portion of federal funding. And that's what this bill does. This bill now moves K through 12, that these subjects in the public schools will be prohibited from providing classroom instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity from kindergarten through the 12th grade. This provision reinforces parental rights in determining how and when their children will be introduced to these subjects.
You're muted.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, is school, I do that for you folks because I'm a heavy breather over here. If those clips are going and I'm breathing, it's bad news for everybody. And I do a lot of coughing. But Brian, is this, I mean, when we send our kids to school, we want them to learn all about the different sexual orientations, right? I thought that's the whole point of public school. Public school is where you learn how to be gay, or learn how to be bi, how to be pansexual. I mean, isn't that where, that's why I would want to send my kids to public school.
Well, as they say, the purpose of a system is what it does, and that's certainly what it's been doing lately, isn't it? And so again, that's, talking about local control. We need when local school boards are, and it's, just to do a little weave here, as Senator Lenny pointed out, it's not necessarily local control. It's not like a bunch of school boards are just suddenly deciding to implement these things. It's that they're getting these mandates from on high, from teachers' unions, from administrators, from the Federal Department of Education when it was controlled by Democrats, to push these things. And so this is where we do need the state to step in and say, no, the purpose of schools is to educate children in reading, writing, arithmetic, help them become good citizens of our republic, not to teach them all these other things. And the point that Representative Hawkins made is a point I've heard a lot. A couple years ago, Florida had their bill to do essentially the same thing, say that you couldn't teach these things, teach gender identity and stuff in K through 5th grade or whatever the number was. And a lot of people rightly pointed out, wait, are you then essentially mandating that they're allowed to do that from 5th grade on? And so he said, okay, that's a good point. Let's just get rid of it in the entire school.
Right. And that's exactly what's going on here. There's no reason to be sitting in classroom with teachers teaching you about fornication in various forms, and whether or not you can show up one day as a boy or as a girl or as a furry or as a tree or as a stormtrooper. Like, who knows? Like focus on reading, writing, focus on that, focus on math. I mean, that's all you have to do. That's all they have to do. Okay.
And they're not even doing that because if you look at the, standardized test scores.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Representative Harris, a rising star, I'll say, in the legislature, he had some reaction to this bill. Let's watch that.
That we send House Bill 352 to the floor with a due pass. I'd like to speak to some of this.
Yes, please.
At the end of the day, when public education came into being, it was supposed to teach kids how to be proficient in reading, writing, speaking, doing some math, social studies, history, and it's kind of grown and grown and grown. And at some point, parents just kind of got left behind and teachers started talking to our kids about sex and gender identity and all these things that I feel are inappropriate for my own kids that are in public education. It's my job as a parent to deal with these situations, not some random teacher at a school that I don't know. As far as the definition of sexual orientation, this is in code. I'm looking at a section of code here, Title 67, Chapter 59, that talks about human rights, and it just says sexual orientation with no definition. So I'm sure somewhere in the state legislative code there is a definition of sexual orientation. This is a no-nonsense bill. We need to get the trust back, like Mr. Taylor spoke to earlier. Public education is not bad in this state, but it's got a bad reputation, and this is a step that will take us in the direction to get some of that trust back with the parents to fix some of these issues, in my opinion.
Yeah, really good stuff there. I sometimes we get lost when we just say teachers in schools, but it really comes down to like, okay, if a teacher is going to raise this issue and bring up this subject material, who are they? What is their motive behind this? Mm-hmm. Because most of the people that I see that want to talk about different sexual orientations, right? And trying to figure out which one are you, these aren't the most savory characters. I just got to put it out there. I don't trust somebody who's obsessed with talking with children about their sexual orientation, right?
Yeah, that's you go back 50 or so years and say that we need a law to tell teachers to not talk about sexual matters with their students, and they think, okay, what exactly is going on here? Did we lose the war? But we've lost the war, Brian. I mean, this is we ceded ground. We did cede a lot of ground, and we got to take it back. Yeah, we're taking it back.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same thing with the gender identity stuff, which is just preying upon, confused children who are going through puberty. They're going through, I don't know too many kids who go through puberty who are just like happy-go-lucky about it all, right?
Yeah.
It's a very sticky, messy situation, and it can get you in a lot of different scenarios and different headspaces with your friends, with your teachers, with your family, and these predators out there, these vultures that are ready to just prey on these people. So it really does come down to this. We're protecting these children from those type of people in those situations. Very good. And again, this law here is only for public schools, which I think is okay, considering, I mean, your kids, you've admitted on the program before, admitted like it's a bad thing, but you've shared on the program before that your children go to a private education. Is this a big deal in your school? Do kids need to learn this stuff in your private school?
No, as they're not learning these kind of things in my school. They're busy learning history and grammar and Latin.
Yeah, and Latin. Look at that. All right. Well, let's listen to this exchange here with is it Matthias and Hawkins? I think it is. Let's listen to that.
Matthias.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Hawkins, thank you for pointing out the new federal position. This bill doesn't have a definition of sexual orientation. Can you point us to the definition that the feds will be using to make determinations of whether to withhold federal funds?
I might just note it's a little bit hard to hear you, Representative Matthias.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman.
Maybe it's just me, but
sorry about that. My question was the definition of sexual orientation is not in this bill, but since the feds are now withholding federal funds for schools that teach this, can you point us to the definition they are using to make determinations?
Representative Hawkins.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Matthias, I can't point you to the piece of code that they will be using, but I do know that we are not dealing with physiology or biology.
Yeah, Brian. Why do Democrats ask questions like that?
Because
I mean, they know exactly what we're talking about.
The Democrats know exactly what we're trying to do, and they don't like it. But they don't want to be caught on the mic saying, "No, we want your children to be exposed to radical gender queer theory in grade school." Because I think they understand that doesn't play well with most people, so they have to find other reasons to oppose the bill and find excuses to try and stop it.
Yeah. Do you think that there's? I mean, look, I respect Representative Matthias. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's a good family man. But there's a part of me that's thinking, has he just drank the leftist Kool-Aid so much so that he's willing to sacrifice thousands and thousands of children's mental health and their lives simply so that way he doesn't come across that he's being mean to somebody who may be going through something similar to this stuff? I mean, because then there's those who are clear predators. They're clearly a danger, I think, to society. But I wouldn't put Matthias in that section.
I find it difficult to put my head in their space on this one, because it does seem like it's just trying to be nice and compassionate, but in doing so they're accepting this massive lie that there's this whole spectrum of sex and gender, that you can change it depending on how you feel, and that you can transition from one to the other, and to take that lie and then use it to really mess up young children. Like you were saying about going through puberty, who's happy-go-lucky at that time? Everybody feels like the world is changing because, they are changing. And to swoop in at that very moment when children are feeling unsure and uncertain and confused and tell them, well, the reason you're feeling confused is because you might be a different gender than what you think you are. It's evil. I really believe instead we should be reiterating what President Trump said in his speech last night. We want children to understand that they are perfect the way God made them. Not, you don't have to alter yourself with drugs or hormones or surgeries to become who you're supposed to be. You are who you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. It was a great moment last night. But again, the highlight of that particular moment was that none of the Democrats clapped for that. They are just in lockstep with this mindset, and it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous, and we see it here on the state level. You see it here in your own communities. I mean, you see it on your school boards. You know, God forbid you see it in the classroom where it does real damage, and that's what we're seeing. And that's you know, you can sit on your hands and inside the Congress and not clap for a line like that, and we call that evil. But when your teachers are doing it inside your classroom, it seems like there's a lot of us out there that are afraid to call these teachers out. And if you're a parent and you're dealing with this in your class, in your school, and you know of students that are dealing this, and you know that there's teachers enabling this, and you're quiet, yet you scream about AOC and Pocahontas sitting on their hands and calling them evil, it's right in your backyard, folks. It's right in your backyard. You need to step up and say something. You need to get out from behind the fear veil and speak out and save these children. I don't know how many times I have heard these stories. Brian, I'm sure you've heard them too, about what's going on inside these classrooms. And yet people just won't come forward. And I'm not about to do it for them. It's not my place. But I just beg you to come forward, because we know you're out there. And for the folks out there that keep saying to us, oh, you're lying, you don't have any of these stories, then, I mean, I got nothing to say except that you know, I mean, we're stuck in that situation. I'll gladly take those arrows that everybody thinks I'm lying. I'll gladly take those arrows, because I'm not. Final word on this, Brian?
Well, they still pretend that it's not happening, and it's a good thing that it's happening. So let's stop it from happening in our public schools.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, folks, a real treat right here. It looks like Representative, stick around for this, Brian. Former Representative Carrie Hanks is with us. Carrie Hanks, so good to see you. I just want to say to you, congratulations. What a huge victory it was yesterday for our kids. How are you feeling?
I'm just thrilled. I'm really happy to see it after all these years. And, you know, some people are saying, well, is it really necessary now? Yeah, it is. We don't know when we're going to have another quote unquote pandemic.
Yeah.
And we just don't know what else the government has in mind for us. And, you know, a lot of us don't trust the government and science anymore after what we've experienced the last, since 2020.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it's so true. Well, we played, I'm sure you were probably in with your students, but we played about a 15-minute montage where we went back and pulled footage of you delivering the first RS back in 21, all the way to the session in 21 and 22. And then, of course, when it was handed off to Brian Lenny to try and fight with Jason Gallagher and Rob Beiswinger and so forth. And then many other folks, you know, you had Ron Nate, you had Guyanne de Mordaunt running bills to try and protect children from masks and stuff. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about is, this isn't just about masks, right? This is about what the top down did to all of us down to the local level to enable the local control, as we've been calling this, local tyranny, to take hold. Is that what you recognized here as well?
Yes, and I actually did watch. I am substituting in a school today, but I was able to watch that montage. And your first two clips of those little kids, I was trying not to cry in front of those students, because that was a lot of the motivation is these kids, and it was so unfair to them. My grandkids were wearing masks, and it was just horrified me. And I actually was in and I know we can't limit it there, but I was in an airport and watched this little probably 3-4-year-old, I don't know how old she was, but she was just screaming, and she would not put that mask on, and they tried to get an agent from, you know, the airline to come help her and everything. Oh, it just broke my heart. And, you know, to watch what you had there at the very first of those little kids just crying, because it's not normal for them to wear masks. It's just, and it's not right. And so, yeah, and then, you know, the testimony about these kids that are already traumatized, and then they have to go wear the mask. I'm so thankful to God that we finally got that through, because, as you said, it isn't just about the mask. It's kind of the symbolism of it, though. And and like I think it was Representative Brent Crane said in his testimony, where does it end? You know, the personal liberty. If you allow that, then the vaccines, and then what's next? You know, it's I'm sure there's plans if we let it get that far. But so yeah, I really appreciated that montage that you did, and I actually already contacted the governor. I emailed him and thanked him for signing that.
Great.
So
Very good.
I think we need to appreciate it when he does the right thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Brian, any thoughts on your head for Ms. Hanks here?
Well, I don't have any questions, but just a recognition that, bringing a bill way back in 2021, I think it was probably a lot harder then because you still had the enormous weight of propaganda and the media and politicians and health districts saying that, no, we need this. And for you to stand up against it at that time, took a lot more courage. I mean, it's great what Senator Lenny and Representative Beiswinger did this year. But by now there's been a preference cascade. The vibe has shifted. But then, you were a pioneer out there, and I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that. And, I think we have more conservatives that are in the legislature now. And, we couldn't even get a hearing. I went, and I believe it was Martin was the health and welfare chairman then. He wouldn't hear it in the Senate. Patty Ann Lodge wouldn't hear it. I actually went to Chuck Winder, and he said, well, it's up to them. And I guess I'm a little cynical because I didn't really believe that. But
that's what he told me too when I delivered those petitions.
Yeah. And then there was some question if I would horse trade getting that into the Senate for supporting another bill, and I don't do that. If there's something I can work with somebody, but the particular bill that they wanted, I couldn't go for it. And so that's the politics that we play.
It is. Well, before we let you go, I got to ask you, are you thinking about making another run for it?
Oh, I'm thinking about it. I keep thinking I need to put something out there that if I can get, a certain level of donations by this summer, that would help. If I can see that there's the support there, I am getting people asking me to please run.
Yeah.
So, and I'm praying about it. It's a tough decision because it's a lot of work, and it's tough when you don't win because I feel like I let people down when I don't win. And all I want to do is serve the people. That's what I do. And I actually have a legislative update that I do every week during the session to help people see what's going on as well as I can. So still involved.
Good. Well, yeah, I was just going to ask you, tell people where they can follow you and how they can get in touch with your newsletter there.
Okay. CarrieHanks.com is the best because then you can email me from that, and I can add you to my list for the update. And it's on Facebook and Twitter as well. I've tried to share it there as well.
Okay, good. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us and celebrate this big victory that you set down for us.
It's great. I'm going back to class, so thanks.
All right, very good. Okay. Take care. All right, Allman, good news. Sorry, folks, we couldn't get Lenny and Beiswinger on, but this is a live show. It's what happens. They're down at the Capitol doing their thing, and but we'll get them on here. We'll get them on here next week, maybe, perhaps, and that's it. Brian, where can people follow you, and what are you working on?
GemStateChronicle.com. I am still working on something about the big Medicaid fight. It's a huge bill that they heard yesterday morning. So I'm still working on it, waiting for Nick Klaus over at IFF to get his analysis in because he's really good at this health policy stuff. So I hope to have that out soon. Otherwise, at GemStateBrian on Twitter.
Fantastic. All right, Brian. We'll see you next time, brother. Take care. All right, folks, it's been great. I'm so glad we got to get through this victory today and celebrate it a little bit with you. And I really appreciate all of the folks out there that made the phone calls, that did everything. It was really, really fantastic to get this thing over the hump. Really, really fantastic. Quick note, yesterday was Idaho Day, and they posted, I think it was Representative Jeremy Crane posted a picture of the program for the festivities that happened in the House. And I don't know if you can see it there, but look at the slogan. Idaho is what America was. I wonder where they got that. You watch this program and you know. We're having an effect, people. We're having an effect. It's really, really good. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us. A couple programming notes. I am going to be traveling on the road Thursday and Friday, so we have a couple of special things lined up for you if you do tune in live tomorrow and Friday. We're going to play a hearing, I believe a hearing on the indecent exposure bill. That'll play tomorrow. And then on Friday, we'll celebrate Idaho Day one more time. You guys can all watch how they celebrate Idaho Day. Thank you so much for joining us, folks. God bless you all. God bless all the folks that helped get that bill over the line and are working on so much more to protect your individual freedom. We ride together. Take care.
Bill, I think it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.